Hey there, I am D. Some of you might remember my review of Stargate Rebellion. It told us about how Hathor tried to claim Abydos for her own, what with Rob being dead, but losing the battle, forcing her to flee to an as of yet unknown location. I pointed out some of its problems, to a point that it may be worse than the movie it was a sequel to, but I couldn't bring myself to actually hate the book. I guess when it comes to Stargate, I'm even worse than a Warzy or a Trekkie. Can this book change my mind? Only one way to find out. Let's read Stargate Retaliation. Sergeant Skinner did not like surprises, but he tried to prepare for them. That was why his men were already in formation well before General West's arrival. We start off with a character we don't know. Okay. A glimmer of extra-dimensional energy gathered at the focus of the Abydos StarGate. Then the energy interface settled in the gleaming golden ring. The hulking shape erupting from the lens didn't look like a general. It was only quasi-human, a tall hawk mask of golden crystal rising from its shoulders. Wow. They don't waste any time, they just immediately start with the action. A dazzling blast flared from the intruder's lance. It caught Skinner and two of his men before they were even in firing position. Brief. The hood on his robe was up to protect his fair skin from the double suns of Abydos. Double suns? Didn't the previous novel mention 3 suns? Yeah, I know, I mentioned how that didn't make any sense, but that's besides the point. It mentioned 3 suns. Why are there only 2 now? Half of the stories about Hathor make her terribly fierce, Jackson replied. On the other hand, you have tales like her involvement in the great court case between hawk-headed Horus and his uncle Set. On the one hand, it's fun to see them try and put a mythical battle between Seth and Horus into real terms. But on the other, if there is any one Horus to hold a court case against, what does that make all the other Horus guards we saw in the movie? Don't! I'm sure the show explains this, but this was written before the show, so it still doesn't make any sense. Barbara Shore released a long pent-up breath as she stepped out of the lens of energy that marked the Stargate's farther terminus. Her legs abruptly didn't want to support the rest of her shapely form. And here we have the prototype for Samantha Carter. I mean, a genius who can, or at least tries to, figure out the aliens' technology? How can you not draw the connection? Funny thing is, Barbara Shore is described to be really smart and very beautiful, but not much of a fighter.
Just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle.
You tell him that. His rehearsed speech sputtered to a stop as a young woman dashed under the awning. She was tall for an Abydos, and moved with an unconscious grace that was a delight to see. The girl supplied her name. Faiza. How much are you willing to bet that Faiza is Hathor in disguise? He watched as Faiza reined in her panicky mount. The girl's usually mobile face was frozen and hard, a grim mask in the harsh sunlight. Odd, he'd seen that face somewhere before. What a shock. But the worst part isn't the predictability of this plot. Her husband's people seemed frighteningly casual in their approach to sex and relationships. Given what we saw in the movie, isn't Shaori being a hypocrite now? As she moved in behind him, kneading Daniel's muscles, he realized her robe must have magically opened. Warm flesh seemed to burn into his back through his robe. So are you telling me that the man who'd risk his life to save his wives wouldn't even take her when she offered herself, which she cheat on his wife? No! No! System error, reboot impossible. Don't worry, I just took an entire bottle of Prozac, which I'll definitely be needing. Why? Because apparently there's a reason why these characters have been acting out of character. Then she was undoing the fastenings at his throat, loosening his robe. "What's this?" she said, finding the chain around his neck. Faiza gathered in the necklace. "The Eye of Ra! Not only Ra's symbol, it's Ra's medallion!" Ah yes, the Deus Ex necklace from the movie. Why is it still around his neck? Didn't he give it back to O'Neill, who in turn would give it back to that old woman? Hathor had discovered that this Eye of Ra was more than a mere decoration. Hang on, I'm getting there. When the room was empty, Hathor produced the Eye of Ra medallion. "I examined this while you slept," she said. "While the exterior is bronze, there are workings inside made of Ra's special mineral." "What does it do?" Daniel asked. Hathor approached the Stargate with the medallion in her hand. She stopped at the carving that represented the constellation Serpens Caput. Hathor pressed the amulet into the center star of the constellation and stepped back. The huge gold quartz ring swung into silent operation, revolving. So the medallion opens the gate to a secret location. And what do we find? Daniel knew that Ra had been a symbiosis of a young human male and an unguessably old alien. Apparently, here was the otherworldly side of Ra's family tree. And no, they're not snakes. The crew, people, were aliens. They were furred, about the color of cinnabar, with sharp snouts and odd floppy ears. Daniel savored the solution to one of Egyptology's thorniest questions. The sleeping, red-furred alien was the living image of the enigmatic god Set. Interesting. And a load of crap! So this book is basically telling us that Ra had access to a ship that not only is more powerful than the ship he was using himself, but also contained an army? Why didn't he deploy those at the first sign of rebellion? So the characters were out of character just so you could introduce a plot point that didn't make any sense to begin with? Anyway, the book ends with Hathor using the ship to destroy Abydos. And now the characters have 1 year to prepare themselves before the ship arrives to Earth. This would have been a great cliffhanger if the characters were still even a little bit likable. This was D. I'm signing off.